Hi, a film that I watched last night to kick in the new year was Roadgames, the 1981 Australian thriller written or co-written and directed by Richard Franklin. Franklin was a huge disciple of Hitchcock and wanted to create his own Hitchcock-style thriller, but with an Australian flavour, working with screenwriter Everett de Roche. So the result is a film that is very much an Australian take on Hitchcock. I feel that this film wouldn't exist without Mad Max having come out 2 years earlier, shown that Australian movies were viable for an international audience. So here we have something that couldn't work unless it had an Australian setting. It's about Pat Quid, an American trucker living and working in Australia, and who is contracted to ship a cargo of pig carcasses from Melbourne to Perth cross country. However, the night before he sets off, he misses out on the last room at the local hotel to a man who takes a girl up to his room. The following morning, he sees the man watch the garbage truck take various bags away at 5:30 a.m. And when he passes him on the road, sees that he's weirdly protective of a cooler that he has on the side seat. Now, Pat also picks up a hitchhiker, whom he nicknames Hitch and is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and who has a story about how she's rebelling against her establishment father. And Pat tells her his story, the two of them suspecting that the man is in fact a serial killer. And as they travel across country, they pursue him and try and investigate while evading the police themselves as they come under suspicion too. I really enjoyed this. It's very Hitchcockian in the best way. We have a wrong man story, we have a romance, we have a very dark sense of humour all the way through. We have twists and turns. We have the police seen as a threat rather than a potential ally. And yet it all plays out against the backdrop of the Australian outback and the stark cliffs and the stark countryside and road houses in the middle of nowhere. I don't think this story could have worked outside Australia. It needs that sense of desolation with cities at either end, which gives the movie a big climax as uh, there is a final chase through the streets of Perth in the hours before the break of dawn as Pat chases the killer, and he is in turn chased by the police. Um, Pat is played by Stacy Keach, never a huge star, but a very strong actor, and he's very charming in the lead role. It's clear that Pat is a very educated, eloquent person. He quotes from literature. He casually mentions a range of jobs he's had in the past, including gun running. But he's still somehow urbane and likable and dislikes being called a truck driver. He says he drives trucks for a living. That doesn't make you a truck driver. Jamie Lee Curtis was cast off the back of her success in a whole string of horror movies, the Halloween films, Terror Train, and all the like. And her screen time is actually quite limited, but she nevertheless works as a plot device character who has some real personality to her. There's some background cast of various people Pat encounters on the road who recur throughout the story and wind up feeding into the storyline itself. And it's a nicely sardonic but still sympathetic take on Australian road culture of the time. I was surprised that the film was actually a surprise flop in Australia and in the US, although some of the critics were more sympathetic and the film was sufficiently well received by the industry that Franklin was hired to co-write and direct Psycho 2. Surely a plum job for any Hitchcock fan. I thought this was a really enjoyable, really well-made, entertaining, thrilling adventure story. I'm sure that Hitchcock himself would have approved. And yeah, I'm really sort of thrilled to start the new year with something that's this fun and visceral and entertaining.